All right, Robert Mueller, he is now reportedly investigating, guess who? Jared Kushner and his foreign business ties. Next, what we know about the Kushners' finances and what President Trump has to say about Mueller's focus on his family. You know what you're watching, Velshi and Rule, right here on MSNBC. Welcome back to Velshi and Rule. Turn up the volume for this one. President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, you know him, Jared Kushner, keeps finding himself in money issues. So let's start with a look at the Kushners' assets. Even though he resigned from his family company, he is still the beneficiary of trusts that invest in, among other things, Kushner properties. They're worth a reported $761 million. But Kushner has not been sitting back counting his dough. In a new revision to his wife, Ivanka Trump's financial disclosure, the pair increased their debt from the $19 million to $98 million range, up to between $31 million and $155 million. That's a big loan. So now let's look at his debt. The New York Times notes that just over a week after the election, Kushner met with members of a leading Chinese financial group trying to get investment in his flagship Fifth Avenue property. According to CNN, the special counsel is looking into that meeting and another meeting held with a Qatari investor where Kushner was looking for a $500 million investment when the Chinese investment fell through. The Qatari money never materialized either, but it brings us to one of Jared's biggest liabilities, Jared's big bet. That's the building, 666 Fifth Avenue. He bought it on the eve of the financial crisis for just under $2 billion, and he's got 12 months left to come up with the $1.2 billion in outstanding on the mortgage, while the building struggles to find tenants and any investors. Kushner already has deep financial ties, of course, to Israel. One of the country's largest financial institutions made a $30 million investment in the Kushner's family real estate business just before Jared's trip to the Middle East last year. Another Israeli lender took on a very unfavorable loan to help finance Kushner's $146 million purchase of an apartment complex in Jersey. And his family's company co-owns about $150 million worth of Manhattan buildings with the family of a diamond business currently under grand jury investigation in the United States. Another deal grabbing investors' interest, a $285 million loan Deutsche Bank, my alma mater, extended to Kushner's family business just 1 month before the presidential election. Federal prosecutors in Brooklyn have subpoenaed Kushner's records with the bank, but it is unclear if the loan is what they are looking into. Wow, Ali Velshi.
This is fascinating because given his need to raise money, which, by the way, if you're a real estate developer, that's constantly what you have to do because banks don't typically finance these kinds of things. Having your father as the president of the United States was going to work out really well for Jared Kushner.
And remember, when we say he's divested or he's put it in a trust, it's his sister and her husband who are out there managing it. And remember,
it's close to being as fishy as the Donald Trump giving his sons control over that trust.
Maybe fishier because he doesn't have the protection that the president does. And remember, it was Jared's sister who went to China last year trying to drum up investors and had a picture of Jared and a flow chart. Look how influential my brother is in the White House.
Let's talk about this with Bloomberg's financial investigations team reporter Caleb Melby. Caleb, you've been really catching up on this and getting deeply into this. Why is it relevant that we talk about Jared Kushner's debt, the size of it, and the fact that it's increasing?
Yeah, so I mean, a great compare-contrast here is with the Trump organization, actually. So Donald Trump, after the financial crisis, kind of transitioned his business from being mostly about development, which requires a lot of financing, to being mostly about licensing, which requires less. After the financial crisis, Kushner Co.'s still went on to buy and own buildings with other partners, and that required a fair amount of debt. And so when you're talking about what sort of potential conflicts of interest Kushner Companies has that may affect Jared's decision-making, you're looking not just at their partners in these buildings and these development projects, but also the people who help finance.
Right. Now, the Kushner family has gone to great lengths in recent months to not disclose who their investment partners are. Walk us through that, because they've been trying to change which court this ends up in, working overtime, spending a lot of money. That seems strange.
Yeah, so there's a lawsuit concerning their Maryland apartment complex and how they interact with their tenants there, and they were going to
tenants claiming that basically they're slumlords taking advantage of people, getting them arrested when they're late, $30, $60 on their rent.
Sure. So Kushner wanted to change venues with the hopes of getting a more favorable environment for a trial, until they found out that doing so would require them to reveal some of their business partners in this project. And then they decided, okay, we'll go back.
Why would they? Doesn't that seem strange?
Well, let's just make sure. Let's just take a step back. We know that if you're in a business where you go to Chase or Citibank to get money to finance your business, that's normal. That wouldn't matter. It is fairly normal in the development industry because the development banks sort of stopped touching them. So it's fairly normal to have to go farther afield to get this kind of financing.
Yes, Ali, but when you talk about reputable investors, I remember Steve Schwartzman just a couple of years ago said, we don't do business with Russia. We don't trust the rule of law. So if you have unsavory business partners, investment partners, there's always the question, the risk, what do you owe them? Do they have leverage over you? Can they use that leverage when you're in, let's say, a position of power, senior advisor to the president?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and to be fair, we don't know of any business ties between Jared Kushner and Russia now. In the Maryland complex, we know that they're in business with an Israeli financial firm, but we also know that historically the Kushner companies has clubbed deals, which is to say, find other rich friends around New Jersey. Do you want to go in on this with us? And it could be that they're just looking to protect the confidentiality of some people they've been doing business with.
And he is trying to do some business with the Chinese.
So,
bang, bang.
Not anymore, but back in 2015 and 2016, they had hoped to work with Anbang, which is a big Chinese insurance firm, to knock down their big building at 666 Fifth Avenue. That's the one with the $1.2 billion debt. And we reported on the deal terms at the time. It was a massive deal. It was going to be $4 billion to knock the building down, build another twice as tall in its place, and it called for a $400 million cash out refi to the Kushners, a $400 million cash payment, which a lot of people we talked to said seemed unusually favorable. Yeah. And the deal fell apart after we reported those deal terms.
This guy knows a lot about this.
He does.
It would be, again, it might be interesting to our viewers to know how many buildings along the Strip in Midtown have Chinese investors. So that's another thing that happens. But again, they are not partnered with somebody who's the son-in-law of the President of the United States and a special advisor. Caleb, good to see you. Thank you so much. Caleb Melby.
It's also important to know when a Chinese company comes in to make a major U.S. investment, they have to get government approval to do so. I think Jared knows some people in the government. All right.